I'm 𝘳𝗲𝗻𝗵 𝗪𝘀𝘆, and you're listening to the Queens of Tech podcast, a podcast series about raising the voice of workplace champions. 60 plus questions in around 30 to 40 minutes with women, women of color, non-binary, and transgender influencers about their journey into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I started the Queens of Tech podcast initiative in May 2022 because I would like to retain more women, women of color, non-binary, and transgenders in the tech industry. Talent is out there, but our work environment needs to improve for all to feel safer, stay authentic, and to be valued for our contributions. My vision is to raise the workplace ecosystem for all in tech by killing the imposter syndrome, stopping bad behavior, and increasing equity opportunities. Each podcast talk is built around 60 plus questions regarding upbringing, education, career path, DEIB, and future advice. My mission is to bridge the gap between schools and workplaces by getting into the heart of my guest's personal life and career journey to inspire other girls, women, women of color, non-binary, and transgenders to unleash their full potential to reach top leadership roles in the tech industry. My goal is to raise the voices of tech champions around the world and together with companies, investors, and politicians, raise the challenges and opportunities around equity, inclusive, diversity, and belonging in our workplaces. Enough is enough. I would like to enforce companies to build a sustainable, inclusive culture to retain diverse talent so we keep the workforce power equity to continue building future diverse and inclusive products. Representation matters. Your voice matters. In this episode, I'm very excited to welcome my guest, tech queen Courtney Hurley, co-founder of Screws and Stilettos, which she has co-founded with her sisters Kelly Evans, which I will interview for the next episode. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, I'm very happy to have you joining us very early in the morning.
Yeah, it's 6 a.m. my time.
I am impressed. How are you?
I'm doing great. I get up at 5 almost every day, so by now I'm buzzing. I'm good.
That is amazing. Now I look forward to getting to know you. So let's dive into your journey into STEM. Hope you're ready for the Queens of Tech 60 plus questions.
I am. Let's get started.
Let's warm up with a few fun facts about you. How would you describe your personality in 3 hashtags?
Energizer Bunny, mom life, and love my work.
How would you summarize your life in 3 sentences?
I'm a mom of 2 and I live in San Francisco with my husband. I grew up with 8 siblings in the Boston area. And lastly, I've really stepped into, in my later life, my role of helping other businesses. And I just absolutely love to be able to see that positive impact on businesses. So it's great. I feel like I have a healthy balance right now.
What kind of music stimulates and motivates you the most?
Honestly, it's like high energy pop.
What is your personal motto?
Everything that feels easy now was once difficult. And that's every time I hit a hard situation.
What is your favorite book?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Not necessarily because of the context of it, because it was really the catalyst that got me moving towards investing in myself, investing more into my family, time, energy, money, whatever it might have been. But really, it kind of helped me step into my own.
What is your favorite podcast?
Mel Robbins. I honestly just love her tidbits, especially things like the let them theory.
Mac or PC?
Mac for sure.
Say something interesting about you that most people don't know.
I was born blind.
What is your hidden talent?
So despite that, I actually have a pretty good visual memory for numbers. And since I was 5 years old, no one's been able to beat me in the game of memory.
So how did you went from blind to be able to see?
I knew that question was coming. It was a mix of development and some surgeries and stuff like that. And then all throughout my younger childhood, whenever I was at home, I would have an eye patch and have to do all these exercises to help strengthen my eyes. And I was actually told at a really young age even though I'd gotten vision back, that I'd go blind again. But here I am today.
Hopefully not. You have very beautiful eyes also.
Oh, thank you.
And if you were to write a book about your life, what would the title be?
𝘵𝘀𝑎𝑠 your way to success.
Great start, Courtney. Now, let us dig deeper. Our childhood has a profound effect on our attitude. Our early experiences shape our belief about ourselves, others, and the world. Now, I want to discover your childhood. Where did you grow up and how did it shape your early experiences?
I grew up in the Boston area, and I, again, was one of 9 kids. So I have 8 siblings. And honestly, I think that is one of the biggest things that shaped who I am. Is I grew up in a smaller town where we were given a safe enough space that our parents gave us liberties to be a little bit more independent. And then on top of that, we as siblings really had to help each other because it was just my parents. We didn't have additional help. We had to help out around the house. We had our daily chores, our weekly chores. We had to set the table, everything. So I think it's one reason why we're so close and why Kelly Evans is actually my sister, and she's one of my best friends in the world. But it really showed me the strength of community by having my siblings. They're like some of my favorite memories growing up. And being in a smaller town, as much as people knock smaller towns, it gave us the ability to be so independent and explore in a way that my parents were fine with, like letting the reins go. And I think that translates into adulthood because now I'm willing to explore different avenues and opportunities and test things.
What was your dream job when you were a child then?
I don't know that I actually had a specific dream job. I was one of those kids that like bounced around, like maybe I'll be a doctor, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. Ultimately, even coming out of high school, I was stuck between art and business and then was like, wait a second, marketing's kind of both. You get the creative and the numbers. So that was kind of when I started to find my direction.
And what was your favorite subject in school?
Math and art,
What was your least favorite subject?
writing, English.
What is your earliest memory of technology and the arrival of the internet?
Sitting in my friend's basement, the 3 of us would stay up till like 3 or 4 a.m. with our friends on AOL Instant Messenger. That damn dial-up tone.
You couldn't turn it off, could you?
No, no. And it was so loud when you knew other people were sleeping in the house and you were like trying to sneak on a computer. So loud.
Which were the 3 first technology gadgets you own and how did it influence your interest in tech going forward?
I actually was one of the first kids in my family, even though I was number 7, to have a cell phone. I went to my parents with basically a whole plan of how I was going to pay for it. And I pretty much came to them with a business plan, which is funny. So I would say my cell phone, and then I had a computer. And honestly, I've always just held on to 2. I did have iPod pretty early on, but I always kind of just hung with the cell phone and the computer. I've always just found like too many devices and I dilute my attention.
During that period of time, who was your female role model growing up and what about her inspired you?
My mom, honestly, because she managed the whole house, all 9 of us, somehow managed to get us all to our practice. We all did sports year round and different activities. She somehow managed all of it. I don't know how. She was in 9 different places at once. She made all of our food, but she did it without seeming stressed out. She managed to shower every day. I just don't even understand that alone. But she did it without additional help, especially when I was younger and we had just moved to Boston. My dad was really trying to build up his career and then build his own business. So the majority of it was on my mom and she did it and she did it smoothly.
Kudos to her. That many children. Wow. Based on everything you said, how do you think where you grew up and the school you went to and the generation you come from influence your education and career choice?
Where I grew up, because it was a smaller town, but it was a pretty affluent town, there was a lot of people that had their own businesses that were leaders in their companies. And it really encouraged you to see how you could do the same. And then on top of that, I had my dad who was an entrepreneur himself. And still to this day, he's like, I should retire, but like, what am I going to do? I need the mental stimulation. So it's interesting because I saw all these different people as leaders and entrepreneurs. I wanted to someday do the same. And that's where I think the whole business component really played into it as well, is I saw that it wasn't just about like, oh, I like to draw, so maybe I'll just go draw for a living. It was, how am I going to turn this into the long-term picture? And I think that really came from my community. On the other hand, it was a very homogenous town. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, I had to force myself into different cultural situations growing up. once I hit college and stuff like that to expand beyond what my comfort zone was. And now I love it.
Very interesting. So let us dig into your career of art and business and marketing then. But before that, I'm going to read two quotes. How does the universe expect me to choose a career path at 16? I can't even choose what I want for dinner. Second, Abraham Lincoln said, I quote, the best way to predict your future is to create it. So Courtney, where and what did you end up studying at university then?
I studied marketing. I went to Bentley, which was an all business school, but I was between an art school and a business school. So I chose Bentley, and I figured with marketing, I could get in a little bit of both.
Who and what influenced you to get into your chosen field?
I wouldn't say that it was a singular person. It was more just the end goal of where I wanted to get by seeing what other people had done successfully to get to where they wanted to be. And that's really ultimately when it came down to business or art, marketing or art, it was like, well, if I go into business, even if I decide to end up down the art role, I'm going to need to know how to run a business to be successful in my art.
So what professional roles have you had before starting the current company?
I feel like I'm one of those people that you don't find as much anymore, but I started in marketing and that's have always been in marketing. I would say the one interesting dual role I would say that I picked up is mine and Kelly's first business together. I also took on the role of leading the custom fabrication side, and it was event rental custom fabrication company. Always marketing, but then the building side was awesome. And it really tapped into, again, creativity, being able to see things come together, and then numbers. I was constantly calculating numbers, figure out how things would fit into a floor plan or how to build this or whatever else.
So what does screws and stilettos do?
We help people release themselves of agency dependencies. And really, overall goal is to just help millions of business owners grow their business confidently and sustainably while maintaining their life balance. But we want to do it in a way that you're not reliant on all these outside vendors. Every single time you bring in another one, you lose another part of your business, essentially. So it's really about teaching people how to bring it back in-house or under their own umbrella, and then teaching them the skills to grow it from there so they can, again, confidently and sustainably grow their business. But on the other hand, we bring in the flow side of things, which is what helps you to maintain your balance. So your life is not only your work, that you still have that personal aspect too.
So what is your title and your responsibility?
I founded the company with my sister, but my responsibility is I kind of tap into three different roles. It's the growth strategy for the businesses, their SEO, and then their paid ads and the analytics.
What was the reason behind starting exactly the niche that you explained to us in marketing?
When we parted from our old company, the event company, we at that point wanted to get back to helping businesses grow and do better and scale using marketing. So the reason we ended up in the niche that we are is it was honestly word of mouth. People just came to us. They loved the experience. They loved being able to let go of those things. It's not even just the ability to be agile, but it's now all of a sudden you have all these trained in-house resources that you can leverage as needed and move with you as needed, but it's a huge cost savings.
What does a typical workday or work week look like for you?
Life balance. I actually only accept meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are for work or if I decide some family time. But my Tuesdays and Thursdays are basically back meetings. Like today, I think I have 11 or 12 meetings. But an average day for me is 5 to 7 a.m. I get up and I work on the screws and stiletto side of the business and whatever will move the needle closer to where I want to be. Then 7 to 9, I'm with my kids. 9 to 12 is client work, whether that's meetings or like my deep work. I'll take an hour, full hour lunch. I go for a walk. I have my lunch. Then after that, 1:30 to 3:30 is usually client work. 3:30 to 4:30, now doing my Spanish tutoring, or I'll do some kind of body movement. And then the rest of the night is kid time. And I'm in bed at around 9.
And I love the quote, choose a job you love and you will never have to work a day in your life. So Courtney, what do you love the most about your role?
Autonomy. It's really that I get to choose my clients. I get to choose the projects. I get to choose the order and the time I'm going to do it. And that's honestly one of the biggest things is autonomy. And it's not just for me, but I give our employees, my assistants, she has autonomy as to what she wants to work on, when she wants to do it, that sort of thing, because I've seen that that has really changed the mindset for me as well.
And what has been the best experience you've had in your current role so far? Any examples you can share with us?
One of my favorite is when this woman came to us who had a business for over 30 years and she was about to close her doors. And we were not only convinced her not to close her doors, but we were able to turn her business around. Then we teach her staff how to continue running. We got her set up with the foundation she needed, and we taught them how to continue running it on their own. And they went from a business that they were about to shut down to a flourishing business with partnerships with Amazon and Wayfair and Pottery Barn and all sorts of stuff.
And what is the biggest challenge you've encountered and how did you tackle that?
So the biggest challenge has been probably for me, and this isn't necessarily client side, but this is my own internal business side, would be finding out how to pivot my business to be able to help more people. Because ultimately we ran into the problem or the challenge of Kelly and I only have a finite amount of time. So we first looked at the commonalities of what our clients needed, as well as the deliverables we were providing, and tried to figure out how we could best package that in a course or some kind of deliverable that would be translatable into more people. And then we pitched those ideas to our clients to get some feedback. Then we began actually testing the kinds of services that people would want with that. So whether that's small group consulting sessions or one-on-one, and ultimately what we do, this has been probably one of our hardest things because especially when it came to just the consulting side of things that we've been doing up until this point, I mean, that was easy. People just came to us. But now this is something that we're outwardly building and providing upfront. So that's where it's test, test, and test again is really our model. And we're always iterating and trying to make it better and more in line with what our clients and potential clients need.
And what do you wish everybody understood about your role?
There's no exact path for every business. The key is to listen and learn and test and get feedback. And that's how you're going to grow successful and in the fastest way.
And what is the one common myth about your professional field that you want to disapprove?
That marketing is always the first to go. So we just had a client lay off 75 people of their 105 people. So there are only 30 people left. And that includes the two of us as their consulting team. And what is amazing about that is that the marketing team is the only team at their business that remains whole. And the reason for that is because we have the performance metrics to back the value. And when you're able to back your value with metrics, you become invaluable.
What is it, Courtney, that you love about working in the tech industry?
I would say one of my favorite things is that you're always finding ways to take like the mundane or the redundant tasks and do it more efficiently because you're kind of in that innovative mindset anyways. So you're like, well, I keep having to do this over and over again. There's got to be a faster way or an easier way that I could do this.
Oprah Winfrey said, I quote, think like a queen. A queen is not afraid to fail. Failure is not a stepping stone to greatness. So, Courtney, what has by far been your biggest achievement in your career?
Helped Kelly grow our first business to $5 million in 3 years. And we only use SEO and word of mouth, but we were able to crush it compared to our competitors. We completely changed the industry where we were. We got to being named like #1 in the Northeast in just a couple short years.
Very inspiring. And what the factors helped you become successful? What are your success habits?
One of the biggest factors for me has been learning the neuroscience behind peak performance and how to tap into flow, which is your optimal state of essentially deep work or like an optimal arousal type thing. But in doing so, you're able to shut out the rest of the world and get so much more done in a truncated amount of time. So if there were 3 things that I could give people to do to try and start that process, it would be #1, to turn on inbox when ready, which basically blocks your inbox from being able to see anything until you actually want to. So then you can press show inbox. I also have it limited to twice a day where I check it. But instead of going to your inbox to look for an email or whatever it is and seeing all these other things pop up that like, oh, I should do that. Oh, I should look at that. Oh, that person. Oh yeah, no, I need to get to that. Now you have a blank slate and all you do is type in the person that you're actually looking for. And it just saves so much cognitive load for maintaining the focus on what you were actually there to do. So that would be my #1 thing. And #2 thing is I spend From the moment I wake up at 5 a.m., within like 90 seconds, I'm at my desk. And I spend those first 1 to 2 hours of my day working on the one thing that'll move my business towards my ultimate goal. And then the third thing would be that I only accept meetings a couple days a week. And again, there's different mindsets, there's different components that happen and different dopamine hit levels that happen when you're in a meeting. So by stacking those all in one day or in one block period, you're able to preserve the other side where it would be your deep focus work. You're able to preserve that side and you're able to get more done. But if you have meetings spread out throughout the week, throughout all the days, you're going to run into situations where it's like, oh, I have an hour for the next meeting. What could I do? Maybe I'll go have a snack. Maybe I'll just check my email for the 67th time today. But by stacking them back to back, you get more efficient in your meetings, as well as you just get them all out of the ways. And then your Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you gain some more of that autonomy back. You get to decide what I need to work on today, what's my first priority, and then you get to just go to town doing it.
And how do you measure your own performance at work, knowing that you're successful or not?
I would say it's a twofold. It's client feedback and marketing metrics. And from those, I discern like, what did I learn and how can I do better?
And with success comes failures. What is your biggest failure in your career and what did you learn from it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say my biggest failure, and I say that failure, the word gently, is having to let go of our old business. And it's a long story, but it was also for the best. And it was hard emotionally at the time to part ways. And that's where I see it almost as a failure, is like we built this big thing up, but we weren't able to sustain it for the long haul. And really, that comes down to a few things. I mean, we were managing 120 employees and we lived at where we worked. We had beds in our office, and there were times in the summers where we didn't leave for 2 weeks at a time, unless it was like to go for a run and grab food. And it just wasn't sustainable. So if I could go back and do that business again, I would have built better practices to manage the workload. And I would have gone in with a slightly different approach of that. Like, it was cool and a pride moment to be so dedicated. And now I see, as I've gotten older and more mature, that that's not the ideal and that's not sustainable. So I would say that would have been my biggest failure, is that we were not able to foresee how the path we were on wasn't going to be a path that would lead to our happiness and fulfillment.
And what would you say is inspiring and motivate you the most in your role and career right now?
Honestly, it's the growth I see in my clients as they implement our strategies. And on top of that, it's my determination to just help more people. As I see it work and as I see them become more successful and as I see these businesses turn around, I just want to do it for more people.
Let us now jump into the influence of mentors, role models, champions, and sponsors. For our listeners, role models can consciously or subconsciously be a powerful force in our lives. In addition, champions can stand up and advocate for us and open up the world of possibilities. Sponsors match emerging talent with leaders and influential employees who can help us move ahead in our careers. Courtney, do you have a mentor, champion, or a sponsor today?
I do, in a way. It's Layla and Alex from 𝘧𝘲. I just was actually out at their facilities in August, but honestly, I really look up to them because they are doing a lot of what I do, but in a different realm and facet. And they are very successful at what they're doing. So I really look up to them for a lot of advice of where to go next.
And history shows that it's been more common for men having mentors, champions, and sponsors in business than women. So how important do you think is to have a mentor, champion, and sponsors through one's career?
I think it's huge. I think they can give you a lot of guidance, but I think one of the big keys that a lot of people miss is that you want someone that is at least a level ahead of you to help to get you where you want to go. And then once you meet that person at that level, usually you need to move on to a new mentor that is at the next level.
Let us move on to leadership. Adena Friedman, President and CEO of Nasdaq, said, I quote, empowering those around you to be heard and valued makes a difference between a leader who simply instructs and one who inspires. And Sheryl Sandberg, ex-COO of Facebook, said, I quote, leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that impact lasts in your absence. Courtney, what does leadership mean to you?
It's a combination. I would say it's leading by listening. And really, I think that is the key. It's listening to your employees. It's listening to the metrics. It's listening to your customers, and then praise over punishment. There's lots of research out there to show but you just see it firsthand when you acknowledge their efforts, you empathize with where they're at, and then you give them constructive feedback. I think that's really huge. But first and foremost, I would say is listening.
And what distinguishes a good leader from a bad leader?
Again, I would go with the praise over punishment is the difference between a good and a bad leader, because getting angry with people only makes them unhappy and less willing to go out of their way for you. But acknowledging their efforts and providing constructive feedback and letting them help come up with solutions on their own really makes them more dedicated to you and their work.
Who would you say is your favorite female, non-binary, or transgender tech leader, and why?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Sheryl Sandberg was a big one because she led up Facebook, and I think she just did a wonderful job of showing what a good leader can do. Her book, I believe, is called Lean In. That also kind of tailored to the leaning into listening to people and leaning into your work and leaning into your strengths. So I would say Sheryl.
How would you describe yourself as a leader?
Always wanting to grow and learn and encourage those around me to grow and learn too. I mean, even my assistant, I was just going through a book the other day that I loved. So I texted her. I was like, if you're interested, you got to read this. This is awesome. I love to grow and learn. I think it's so motivating. And when you share that with others, it's just contagious.
So how does your leadership compare towards your sister's leadership?
Kelly's like a genius in her own realm. I think people look at her and some of the speed at when she does certain things. So even when it comes to like HubSpot and the things she's able to create in that platform, that literally is to the point where now HubSpot, when they can't figure out a problem, they come to her and ask her to help find a solution for clients. And just seeing how she always manages to find a way to make it work. At the same time, too, she will bring anyone on board to teach them how to do it too. It's so inspiring.
And as a leader, Courtney, what values do you prioritize the most?
Transparency, empathy, accountability. And then the last one would really be adaptability and being able to shift as we shift and move as we move.
And what leadership lessons have you learned that have shaped you into the leader you are today?
I used to set up a lot of guides and how-tos for people as they came into my business. And then I moved away from it. That was obviously back to when we had 120 employees and that was 100% necessary. And then as we decided to part ways with that business and just go back to small, just us, as we started to bring on employees on this side of things, I started to do a lot less of that. And what I instantly started noticing is that the results I expected were coming in slower and not as fully flushed out as I would have expected. And it really came back to building those guides and the proper training. So that would be one of the biggest things that I've learned from it is how valuable that training really is.
What would you say are your 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses?
3 strengths is that I like to present with people and be present with them. I really like to teach them. And then I can handle the feedback. So whether that's a client or an employee, I can handle feedback. Give me the feedback. That's a great thing. That's how I learn. And that's how I'm going to be better. 3 things that I would say are more of my weaknesses is that by nature, I'm a little bit stubborn. I've had to let go a lot, and that's where Mel Robbins comes in. But I like to do things a lot myself. So it's that delegation. I've had to really learn how to do that better. And then I'm very visual. We can talk concepts and everything, but I like to see it written down or I like to see it in a visual format. So that's something where like I don't like to just conceptually talk about things. I want something a little bit more in depth.
Let us now jump into the hottest topic in business today, workplace culture, unlocking the power of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Courtney, what does diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging mean to you personally?
It's treating each other with kindness, giving them empathy and grace and encouraging their individual growth.
What do you consider being 3 to 5 signs of good company culture if you were to join a company tomorrow?
I would say long tenure of their employees, the daily sentiment of the group, and then their willingness to want to bring family and friends into the business. Because if they're that excited about what they do and they constantly wanting to like bring a friend on board, that tells you about their happiness.
And as a woman, what has been the most significant political or and culture barrier in your career, and how have you overcome these challenges?
At 24 and 25, which is how old Kelly and I were with that first business, We had a hard time with people taking us seriously, even though we were thriving. It didn't matter that we were beating out our competitors. People still had a harder time almost trusting us and taking us seriously. So we ultimately ended up having to hire older men to work in our finance and our sales departments in order to compensate for that. So that way, when people came in and saw, like, oh, it's these two young girls that have started this business and whatever else, that they also saw the men in there that almost validated that we're doing something right.
How do you discuss DIB challenges such as salary gaps, promotions, or maternity leave? Maybe not together, but maybe with your peers and community?
One of the biggest things that we like to push is that diversity comes with a mix of perspective. And for us, we have a video editor, we have an assistant, we have a DM setter, and 2 out of 3 of those are men. They're from different countries. And honestly, they all have their own different perspectives that they come to the table with. And I think that's one of the biggest thing is that for you to really get the full picture and be able to grow in the best way possible, you need different perspective. And that's where these different cultures, these different genders, these different levels of success all provide that.
There are many public and internal discussions about the barriers women, women of color, non-binary, and transgender individuals face from reaching higher positions or receiving funding in the tech industry. How have this issue affected you, and what is your advice on overcoming these roadblocks?
The 3 strategies for how companies can build a stronger corporate culture would be listen to your employees. Again, it goes back to that listening over and over again. Let them give feedback, implement the necessary change based on those feedback, and just give them an equal chance. Just because I have an assistant and just because I've been in the industry a lot more doesn't mean that I have better ideas than her all the time. Honestly, she comes to me all the time with awesome ideas. And it kind of goes back to when you give spaghetti and marshmallows to an engineer versus a kindergartner. The kindergartner almost always beats the engineer in how high they can build the tower. And it's because of a different perspective. So you just have to keep an open mind and encourage that level of feedback within it.
And what would you say are the key challenges of implementing a DIB culture in a workplace and in the tech industry today?
Honestly, it's like the good old boys are comfortable in their ways and not as open to moving beyond them. They'll innovate product, but they won't innovate culture as much. And they simply just aren't the best leaders. They're product focused, but a product focused innovator doesn't necessarily translate into a good leader.
And why do you then think it's important for more women, women of color, non-binary, and transgender to join the tech industry today?
More perspective. Honestly, I think women have just such a slightly different take on things. And again, it goes back to perspective and listening. And the more you can bring women in, the more perspective you're going to have and the stronger environment and stronger product and the stronger brand that you're going to create.
And how do you think companies will benefit from not just having them as leaders, but actually higher gender representation at C-suite level and boardrooms with a voice?
I think it goes into a few components. I think number one is that perspective. And then number two, it encourages. So you can have geniuses of any gender, any background. And really, by also having those leaders, you're encouraging other people who might be the best fit for your company to step into a role. And you're really giving them that boost of confidence to do that as well. But again, it also comes back to from a business perspective, you are getting those additional inputs and opinions and viewpoints.
That is great advice. And why do you still think it's the main reason we still see few women, women of color, non-binary, and transgender leaders in the tech leadership roles and as startup founders still today?
I've given this one a lot of thought. I think it really goes back to men, especially for like our generation. Men were nurtured as young kids to be trusted with risk and to take risk when they were younger, to go jump off that one thing. Whereas women were a lot more like, oh, I don't want you to get hurt. Be a little bit more cautious, be more aware of what other people are thinking of you. And I think that really plays a big role into this. And part of it is by evolutionary, like the men were out hunting, the women were at home with the babies. And I think that's really translated into like an implied trust that comes with men before they've even had to prove themselves. Whereas the women have to prove themselves first and build trust.
There's another concern and challenge, and that is that the data reveals the concerning trend of low funding rates for startups led by women, with only 1 to 2% of the funding directed towards women in the tech industry. It's said that Black and Latina women in particular receive less than 1%. What factors do you believe contribute to this imbalance, and what strategies can be activated to increase funding for women-led startups?
So again, women seem to have to prove themselves over and over and over again in order to get the same consideration, not even the same result, but consideration that men get. And there's just that lack of innate trust. So something that can be activated is, I really am a big proponent of metrics. Ultimately, you go to a man with your feelings and your opinion, and it's a little bit less trusted. But if you go to a man with, or a group with straight numbers, they can't argue numbers. So my takeaway would be keep the numbers, track the numbers, deliver the numbers.
And how much do you think the tech industry has changed regarding the DEIB since you joined?
Honestly, not a whole lot. Something that always surprises people is when I say that I have my own business, but I know that that's because I'm a woman and I'm also a mom of 2 young kids. But on the other hand, if I was a man with a business that I just started and 2 young kids, I would be getting high fives, not, oh, wow, like shocked. So that's definitely something I've noticed. And I don't think that that's something that's necessarily changed in recent years. I think there's been some movement. I think there's a lot of people that talk the talk, but they don't walk the talk.
And looking back on your career, then, what one thing would you have changed in your working environment to break the bias?
I love a mix of men and women from different cultures, and I want to translate that also not into my work, but also into my kids and my family life. So right now, my kids are actually in a Spanish immersion school where there's a lot of families that are also ESL. And I think that having that we're all on the same playing field mindset from the beginning is going to build better leaders.
And Courtney, looking forward, what actions will you take as a leader to reduce bias and improve the IB for the next generation in tech?
I would say inclusivity and keeping track of metrics to back their impact.
Let's move on to another hot topic in business today, which is work-life balance and mental health. Courtney, I've heard you have undoubtedly a very busy lifestyle. How do you take care of yourself to maintain good mental health?
I do a few things. So I spend the first couple of hours of my morning working on what my number one goal is. I give myself very intentional breaks throughout the day to make sure that I am able to recover throughout the day. And then at the end, I try to fit in some body movement for me and some family time at the end of the day where I'm not glued to a phone and much more intentional about separating work and life. And I used to just work in my living room, and I was proud of the fact that I was able to work from home. And I've seen the value in separating that. So that's something that really helps me to maintain a good balance.
Have you ever experienced burnout?
I have. And again, that was that old business where we basically lived and worked there. So what I do now, it's really about that active recovery. So you might be working really hard, but as hard as the focus is and how important that focus is to be able to get things done, it's equally as important to find time to recover. And that could be in the form of exercise, family time, just relaxing, something that's non-stimulating to allow your body and your brain to recover from that work.
And what is your advice on how companies can create a more mentally healthy workplace in the new now?
It's really about developing people's skills to be able to tap into the flow, to be much more productive with your day, much more intentional with your day, so you can bucket those meetings, as well as giving yourself that personal time, scheduling in that personal time, and doing what you say you're going to do. If you're going to go work out, then get your ass up and go work out. So it's really about maintaining all of that, but encouraging a culture where the person's self is also prioritized, and giving them the tools and skills to be able to understand how to work more effectively and how to also turn off. Something I also do is I condense my days. So again, I try to end my days at 3:30 every day, and that's very intentional. So then I have some time after, and I feel by the end of the day, I feel great about what I've gotten done. And I'm not sitting there at the end of the night on my computer. Like once my computer's shut, it's shut for the day.
And what would you say motivates you every day to get out of bed?
This is going to sound so cheesy, but I'm honestly really excited about what I'm working on and the clients I have and the work I'm building. And I wake up every day just excited to do it.
Now, let us wrap up with a few words of wisdom and a piece of advice for our listeners. Courtney, what is the best piece of advice you've been given that has helped you during setbacks in your role and career?
That on the other side of every struggle is a smooth path. So it's the struggle is you learning something new and getting to that next level.
And then what is the worst advice you ever received in your career, and how did you handle that?
Worst advice would probably be that if it didn't work the first time, it's just not going to work, because oftentimes it's about iterating and testing, and it's just that you didn't nail it the first time. And honestly, I now look at it as if it worked the first time, then we almost did something wrong, because there's got to be some way that it could have been done better or improved.
And is there something you wish you would have known, or a skill you wish you had when starting out in the tech industry?
Sales. I mean, it's so interesting because marketing is so important. Marketing brings in the leads, but sales is what converts them. I never looked at myself as a salesperson, but I see so much strength in sales, and it gets a bad rep because you think of like car salesmen. But ultimately, at the end of the day, as a business owner, you have to be selling yourself every day. As an individual, you are selling yourself to teachers, to other parents, to friends. And really, it's sales. At the end of the day, we are all salesmen, and some people just know how to do it a lot better.
And if you had the ability to go back in time to when you were just at the beginning of your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Embrace the phases. I truly believe there are 3 phases: 21 to 25-year-old babies, where like you're just in it for the check. You can't wait for 5 p.m. or the weekends. Then there's the phase where you dive into your work and you're like so proud of the fact that your work is your life and that's your only life. And then you hit like 30 something and you realize that like balance is actually key and you can love both and enjoy both. And I think to get to that balance, you need both almost. And so I would say enjoy the phases. Don't try to necessarily remove one, but embrace them, enjoy them, and take as many learnings out of them as you can.
And what advice will you give to young girls, women, women of color, non-binary, and transgenders who are trying to break into STEM fields today, especially wanting to become next generation leaders and founders?
I would say a couple of things. Never give up. Keep those metrics throughout your life. Every success, write it down. Something I do is I put in my notes, I just have like more or less a case studies notes in my phone and computer, and I'll just throw screenshots in there when people give positive feedback and just compile it for yourself. Sometimes you only need to look at it, but also one day you might be in a job interview and someone will be like, well, how have you impacted people? Show me that it's worth it. And you'll just have this endless list of all this positive feedback and all these metrics and everything else. So just compiling it as you go would be one of the best ways to show your worth, even without having to show the work.
Last but not least, what is next for you in your role and career in tech? What are your career aspirations?
I want to get to a point where I'm helping people on a much larger scale, essentially bring those services back in-house, but also teach them the neuroscience and the flow states and teach them how to be more effective and gain that life balance so you can bring it back in-house without burning yourself out. And it's really about getting so much more efficient in life and a little bit of severing some technology dependencies. So that's really something that I'm super excited to grow and teach other people. It's been life changing for me. And I went from someone who was constantly ticking the clock, feeling like I never had enough time. Now I am happy. I go to sleep with like a smile on my face. I wake up excited to do my work. At the end of the day, I close my computer and I'm like, yeah, and then I go to get my kids and like I'm present for my kids. I then get to like sit down and hang out with my husband for 15, 30 minutes at the end of the night. And then I go to bed and I still get in my 8 hours. You can have it all. And that's something that I'm really excited about, is to be able to translate that and teach that to other people.
That is amazing. Thank you very much, Courtney, for all your advice and sharing your stories, because sharing your journey here at the Queens of Tech podcast will without a doubt inspire change and reshape company culture for the next generation of women, women of color, non-binary, and transgender leaders and founders in tech. Thank you for listening. For more podcast episodes and to learn more about the Queens of Tech initiative and to support us, visit queensof.tech.